Well, good morning, Warehouse. Good morning, Fire Hall. Our friends up in Churchill. Looking forward to joining you in October. That's going to be a lot of fun. Everybody watching online, we're actually getting stories of entire families sitting around the computer watching live online. Hit the chat button. Say hi to Pastor John. He's your online host today, and we're so thrilled that you've joined us. So we are into a new series, week 2. I'm thrilled that you're back for more, and it's Do Hard Things. And in case you're sitting there thinking, wow, that's kind of a cute little title, that's a nice pithy little title, but is it really biblical? Let me tell you that I think this is a title that Jesus would have chosen. I think Jesus could have just as easily have scripted this title. And the reason I'm saying that is because of what we read in Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7 says this: don't look for shortcuts to God. The market is flooded with surefire, easygoing formulas for a successful life that can be practiced in your spare time. Don't fall for that stuff, even though crowds of people do. The way to God, the way to life, the way to God is what? Is hard and requires total attention. In another version, it just talks about how the world's way is a broad, paved highway, but God's way is a narrow way. And it kind of makes me think that, the king of the world rides this paving machine that does like 32 lanes of perfectly smooth blacktop at one time and just invites everybody to come speed along. No speed limits. I mean, just have a great time on this massive freeway. But we know that the king of our hearts and the king of this universe, he rides a donkey and rides a much narrower, steeper path. The gods of this world, they are luxury, convenience, comfort, and ease. But that is not our God. And Jesus says, listen, if you're going to follow me, it's going to be a narrow way, a narrow gate, and it's going to be hard. So we think it's a great time for us to remind one another that the followers of Jesus, they rise up and they do hard things. Now, if you're just joining us this weekend, maybe you're here for the first time or just kind of back after summer and you haven't been around for the last couple of weeks, let me quickly kind of bring you up to speed where we've been. So 2 weekends ago, we had our Vision Weekend, and it was a great time of just saying, here's our vision for 2018, 2019, and we said our vision is not so strategic and all about statistics. Our vision is about our hearts. Our vision is for your heart, that you would become bold and passionate and faithful. And we said we have a verse that's going to be our theme verse for the entire year. Be a great thing for you to memorize it. Romans 12:11. Do not slack in your faithfulness and hard work. Let your heart be on fire, bubbling up and boiling over as you serve the Lord. So that's where we're going. That's where we're going this next year, and we're thrilled that you're here. And last weekend, we opened up with boot camp, boldness boot camp, and we called it Do Hard Things. And the first hard thing that we talked about was really we're going to do something hard as an entire church. We're going to get together as a church community. It's hard to gather together as a church and do something all at the same time, but we're going to actually take on a challenge of raising $50,000 for a community kitchen, for our community kitchen over at the garage. We're calling it the 274 Turkey Trot. It's happening in a couple of weeks. And to remind us why we're doing this, here's Pastor Turkey himself.
All right, well, I'm coming to you on location this week from the garage. This is the place where we're trying to build a new kitchen to resource our neighborhood, but this is also the place where, on a weekly basis, multiple times our community comes together to access food, to share a meal, an incredible community here. However, feeling a little vulnerable today because on the menu, turkey soup. Well, today we thought we'd just check in with a few of our friends that call this place home. Denise, what do you think about us doing this race?
Oh, it's going to be a lovely day. Come, more people, more fun, more people to run or walk or...
What about waddling?
I don't know what's that.
I'm here with my friends. They're enjoying some lunch together. Hey, guys, what do you think of this place?
Awesome. Good to be here.
Yeah, we've been here 5 years already, and we like it.
Love it.
And what do you think of my attire today?
You need help.
We do need help. He's right. We need help to build a kitchen here, don't we? Have you ever seen me looking better?
No.
Well, I'm here with Maria. She's a rock star in this place. She serves soup every week. What do you think of this place?
I love this place. It feels like home here, and it's a good reason to run.
Awesome. And you're excited about a new kitchen?
Oh, am I ever?
Well, hey there.
What?
How are you doing today?
Good.
What are you? I'm doing great.
What's going on?
What do you think of this kitchen?
I hate it. We need a new one.
I couldn't agree more. What do you think this place does for our neighborhood?
It's really encouraging people. As far as I hear from the community, this is the best food bank in Winnipeg.
All right, well, here's the thing. This place means so much to so many people, and we would love to invite you to join us on the Turkey Trot as we raise money to build a new kitchen for our neighborhood. It's not too late. Join in, raise the money, do the run with us. Visit myturkeytrot.com. All right, thanks so much.
So 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away from for the weekend of our Turkey Trot. We got about 19 teams and about 50 individuals signed up. We've already raised $5,000, which is incredible. But I want to challenge you to do something hard. You know, the Riverwood culture is, I'm going to get a team and I'm going to sign up on October the 5th, the night before. And I want to challenge you to get your team and sign up, or as an individual, go on the site this weekend. Do it today, and let's continue to support what's happening in our community. So we launched Do Hard Things last weekend, and I brought you the first hard thing challenge, and we were talking about serving, but last weekend we discovered that serving God is not the hard thing. Serving God is not the hard thing. And the hard thing challenge was this. Number one, having the guts to honestly look at the bullet holes in the buckets of our lives where all the good things that God has poured in are leaking out. God has poured in tremendous resources into every one of our lives. We talked about them last weekend. It shapes who you are to join Him in mission. Spiritual gifts was the first one. And then God has given you a heart or a passion or an ache or something that just fuels you. He put that in you. And He's given you abilities and natural talents and skills. And He's given you a personality and a temperament. And He's given you experiences. And He mixes all that together. And He wants you to use that to pour out and join in Him in meeting needs, the needs of the world. That's how He's chosen to change this world, through you. And yet so many of us have bullet holes in the bottoms of the buckets of our lives that all of that is leaking out, and none of it is going where it was intended to go. And we said the first hard thing is to discover and to take an honest look at where are those bullet holes and how do I begin to plug them. So last weekend, we had a card. We got a big board at the back of every one of our worship communities listing every opportunity to serve in your church, to build your church. And about 80 people filled that card out. We were thrilled. It was fantastic. Our team went to work on contacting, beginning conversations, because we know that in order to have a really dynamic, rockin' church, we need everybody on board. Everybody give, everybody serve, everybody give, all in. That's what makes a great church. You know, here's the bottom line. If you want your church to be dynamic and life-giving and reaching and caring and discipling and advancing and growing and all these good things, that's great. It's a great desire. But it'll only happen if you make it that. Because you are the church. That's the bottom line. You are the church. And so, yes, the weight of this thing sits squarely on your shoulders as much as it does mine. Now, let me just kind of be honest about a couple of the high-intensity need areas of our church right now. I don't want to send anybody on a guilt trip. I don't want to manipulate anybody. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just simply going to give you the facts. And here's the facts. We have two worship communities that are growing faster than any other. Our Saturday night worship community, about 300 adults, 70 kids, and our African worship community, more kids than adults, about 42 kids last week, and I think 41 adults. They're growing exponentially. However, those are the two areas in our church that are the hardest to staff. They're the most difficult to find people to step up and serve. In fact, last night, we ended up having to recruit friends and family who are qualified from other churches to come and serve our church. We had to phone them up and say, hey, we're in trouble here. Would you come? Would you step up and help us over here in Elmwood? Would you come and help us take care of our kids? Because we weren't able to do it ourselves. I'm just telling you the facts. Our worship community over at the African worship community, in terms of kid workers, has one. So we need help. So here's what I believe. I believe God is going to raise up a small army, and those worship communities that we've been told are impossible to staff, I think He's going to do miracles, and some of our strongest children's ministry is going to happen in those worship communities because that's what our God does. Our God is the God of the impossible. But let me just say this. If you are supposed to be working in one of those, would you please let us know? Because we could sure use you, and we would love to help you find your place. So we talked about hard things. And last weekend I told you that we had a couple of different titles for this series. My favorite was Where the Magic Happens. I love that. And the reason I was so inspired by that wasn't so much that title as the little circle down below, This is your comfort zone. This is your comfort zone, but when you extricate yourself from the comfort zone and you go out and you do something for God, that's where the magic happens. I love that title. Our creative team came up with another title that they absolutely loved, and it was Rise Above. And they one-upped me because they came with a scripture. They said, hey, we got this scripture that is just powerful. Listen to it. Colossians 3:1. Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. We went, oh, what a fantastic series title. What a fantastic verse. Wouldn't this be great? Because after all, we're living in times where we all feel like we need to rise above. I mean, let's just kind of take an honest stock for a moment of where we're living. We're living in a world where superpower conflicts are once again rising to the surface. We're living in a world where terrorism is getting more and more dangerous. We're living in a world where there's a surging racism and racial tension that we need to deal with again. We're living in a world of degrading politics, intoxicating amounts of social media, and mental health issues that are nearing epidemic levels. And then you've got all your own stuff, right? You got your own struggles, your own problems, your own stuff that's weighing you down. And we thought, oh my goodness, what an awesome thing to call this, rise above. How do we rise above all that stuff in our lives? Well, Solomon, actually, in the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes, has an answer for us. Listen to this. Ecclesiastes 4:9. Two are better than one. If one of them falls, the other can help them up. But who will help the pitiful person who falls down alone? And if one person is vulnerable to attack, two can drive the attacker away. As the saying goes, a rope made of 3 strands is not quickly broken. You've probably heard that verse before in the context of a wedding, right? You've seen the 3 strands, and we've talked about how God is that other strand in the marriage. That's a fantastic picture. It applies, but that's not what this passage is talking about. This passage is simply saying there is strength when you are together with other people. And if you can find a small group of 3, oh my goodness, your small group of 3 people will make your life one where you rise above. If you are fallen down, if you are trodden down, if you feel like life is kicking you in the teeth, if you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, what can help? Another person to lift you up. You need to be with other people. So we could have called this series lots of different names, but we landed on Do Hard Things because we really felt that that's what God was calling our church strategically to do, to embrace the hard things of our faith and the hard things of life and to do hard things. And right about now, you're probably going ahead of me and you're thinking, oh, I know where this message is going. I see it really clearly. You're going to talk about community. You're going to talk about being part of a small group. You guys are so smart and so wrong. I'm not going to talk about community today. I'm not going to challenge you to sign up to our program of small groups. Because you see, community is really a word that has been the bar has been so lowered. Our world has taken the word community that has been a rich and powerful word, and it has dumbed it down so bad. In fact, the vision I have of community these days is that it's an old arthritis-filled lion sitting in the retirement section of the zoo, having been spayed and neutered a long time ago, all of its teeth having fallen out, and it's just gumming its meat to death. I mean, in other words, I think community is a word that is toothless. It's not dangerous. It's not alive. It's not pulsating. In fact, I did a little search in Winnipeg of all the organizations or businesses that have the word community in them. 583. have the word community in them. Retirement communities, mobile home communities, community financial services, Agassiz community law offices, Southern Community Dental, Taché Community Daycare, Vicar Community Chevols, community policing, community theater, community playgrounds, community online community nurses, community college, gated communities, legal community, medical community, community relations, Jewish, Islamic, Christian community, community workers, community development, community bank, community spirit, a rural community, community centers, and then, of course, all the community churches that talk about what? About their worship communities and their small group communities and their serving communities. Community is everywhere, and if you want to add a little bit of the human touch and human feel to your organization, you add the word community, you slap it on. But it means nothing. It's a toothless lion sitting in the retirement section. So I went on a little bit of a quest, and I thought, what's after community? You see, most of us have lived our lives in church anyway as having community touted as the goal. It's the pinnacle that we're supposed to be striving for is community. But I thought, is there anything above community? Is there anything after community? Is there anything to strive for once you've kind of got some community? Is there anything beyond community? Well, last weekend, my friend Lawrence took on a hard challenge. He did something incredibly hard. Talk about do hard things. And he was telling me the story of what he did. And as he was telling me the story, and I heard him actually tell the story to other people a few times, every time he told the story, something pinged in my heart. And it wasn't the indicator that he was talking about community, it was something else. And so I asked Lawrence if he would share his story with you. And if you would monitor your heart just for a few minutes to see if, as he's telling his story, anything pings in your heart, because I think it's an indicator of what lies beyond community.
I actually, at the beginning, I did not enjoy running as much, but I did it because it was a way to stay fit. And I did I ran a half a marathon. And during winter time, about 2 years ago, the hypothermic half. And as soon as I finished and I got to the finish line, a friend of mine asked me, so Lawrence, what is next? And have you ever thought about a 50K? So that's when I decided that maybe that would be a great challenge for me to do and to continue to stay fit and to call out a goal that I could plan for, that I could train for. And I found someone that would coach me and help me kind of attain my goal. And since the month of May, I started to train for my 50K. It was very exciting the morning off, and I was there before the sun was up. I was very, very excited. I had done all my training, and I had even nutrition. I had down exactly what I was gonna be eating, how much water I should be drinking. And the race started, and it was just a rush as you started the race with a bunch of other people. And when I got to kilometer 38, it's like all of a sudden I hit a wall. It was hotter than they expected it to be. We were actually pretty much we were crawling, going up a very steep hill, and I just felt that I couldn't go any farther. And just about when I was about to sit down for a rest, I heard this voice right behind me, and somebody yelled out, "Do not sit! Do not sit!" And I turned around. It caught me by surprise that somebody would say that. I just wanted a little rest. And she said, "If you sit down, you are not going to get up." And she told me her name, Jennifer. She asked me, "What is your name?" I say, "My name is Lawrence." And she says, "Lawrence, if you sit down, you're not going to be able to get up. Why don't we walk the next kilometer, and maybe you tell me about your training, you tell me what you've done to get here, and we are going to get through this." And she was trying to talk to me to keep me busy, but right away she told me, "Lawrence, you're sweating, which means that you still have, you're hydrated properly, and tell me about your training." I told her how long I have trained and how exciting the process was, and she reminded me, "Lawrence, you put in all the work, you've done all the right things, now it's all a mental game. You are fitted and you can do this. Just don't think about the 12 kilometers that you have left. I just want you to think about the next 8 station. You're going to hydrate, you're going to eat, and you're gonna make it to the finish line." And she was actually running with a few friends, and she left their friends behind. They continued to run, and she stayed with me. And it was pretty neat because she told me that the first time that she ran an endurance race was in Costa Rica, which is actually where I'm from, and she almost was not able to finish if it would have been for a woman and that stayed behind with her and helped her finish the race. And I so desperately into I wanted to do something for her, and she says, Lawrence, no, what I need you to do is next time you run a race and somebody runs into trouble, I just want you to stop your race and run along with them and get them to the finish line. So anyway, she got me to the last aid station, which was about 8 kilometers from the finish line, and she made me repeat to her that I was not going to stay there for longer than 10 minutes because your body starts to relax and get comfortable, and it is harder to re-engage on that one hard thing you've set your mind on doing. And I started to re-engage. I walked a few hundred meters, and then after that I started running, and it's like a second wind of energy came over me, and I was able to finish my race. And my goal was actually to finish my race in 7 hours and 30 minutes, and I was actually able to finish in 7 hours and 24 minutes. I don't think that if she would have taken charge at that one time and in a very strong tone, she encouraged me not to sit down. I think that if I would have sat down, feelings of inadequacy would have probably taken over, and feelings of I'm not good enough probably would have taken over that. I think without her challenging me and reminding me of what I had done and calling out that training and all that effort that I had put in previously, I don't think I would have been able to finish. I think I would have sat down and just call it quits and get a ride back to base camp, so to speak. But that was, I think it was vital. It was a pivotal moment for me to be able to finish my race.
So what you felt there, that little ping, wasn't community. See, he was part of the running community. He was part of the North Face Endurance Challenge community. He was part of the, this Wisconsin running community there. So what? Big deal. Those communities didn't do anything for him, but what Jennifer did, by yelling at him, intuitively seeing where he was at, and yelling at him and saying, don't you sit down, and then putting her hand on his shoulder and saying, look you keep going, and we're going to finish this thing, and I'll meet you at the end. That was something different than community. So what was that? What was that? It was powerful, but what was it? It was beyond community. It was the next step. It was level 2. I want to suggest to you that was not community, but that was communitas. What? Communitas. You say, well, what's communitas? Oh, hang on. You're just trying to be smart and you made up a word. I didn't just make up this word. In fact, this is a very old word. It's a Latin word. It's a word that means the next level after community. Anthropologist Victor Turner is a guy who kind of brought this term back to life in the early 1970s and 80s. He was doing a study of some really, really remote wilderness backcountry tribes in Africa. And they had some rites of passage for their young boys, and he was studying their rites of passage. And basically the way it worked was that these boys would grow up in a maternal influence under the care of their mothers in the women's section of the village until they were 13. But then when they were 13, one night at midnight, the men would come and they would break into the women's section of the village, and they would kidnap the boys, and they would blindfold them, and they would take them out to the wilderness, and they would beat them and rough them up. They would circumcise them. You can imagine how terrified these kids were. And then they would leave them out there in the wilds, backwoods of the Africa for 6 months to fend for themselves. An elder would come once a month to mentor them and check in on them. And so Turner is studying these boys. And at first he finds out that they're like frightened, they're terrified, they're disoriented, they're all kind of fending for themselves. But then they find one another. And as they find one another, they begin to lean into one another. They begin to care for one another. And he watches something happen amongst them that was not community, but he called communitas. He said this was the next level. This was so much better than community. Now, maybe to help you understand the difference between community and communitas, let me give you a comparison chart, okay? So here we are. Community is about our common interest, but communitas is about common mission. Community is about the community exists for me. I'm interested in running. I'm interested in pottery. I'm interested in this language. I come from this country. I'm part of that community. It's there for me. But in communitas, I exist for the community. In community, they journey along a known path. But in communitas, they journey along an unknown path. Who knows what's going to happen next? In community, it's safe and predictable. In Communitas, it's unscripted and unpredictable. Community likes comfort and convenience. Oh, they like comfort and convenience. It's got to be easy. But communitas craves challenge, and they crave making an impact with their lives. Community is about consistent programming. But communitas is about survival and about going on a quest. Community is about shared topics and interests and curriculum. However, communitas is about shared ordeal, shared visions of the future, and a shared life. Community comes from the word common, unity, and communitas is all about common challenges. In the Bible, just about every example of a small group was not an example of a huddle and cuddle. It wasn't. It was an example of people who got together as a small group to take on a challenge because they had a mission, because they had an ordeal. The Bible is full of these small bands of people who were out in these wilderness challenges and experiences, and they were stepping out of their comfort zone. And we see the magic happen. We see amazing happen right there. Nearly every miracle in the Bible is recorded during a time of ordeal and challenge and difficulty. Not when people are just sitting around huddling and cuddling and studying the Word of God together. That didn't happen very often. It's usually in this context of crisis. Genesis chapter 12, Abraham and Sarah, they're living the good life. He's got a great business. He's got a great house. He's one of the wealthiest guys in the country. And God says, I want you to go someplace, but I'm not going to tell you where. And they decide to leave their comfort zone and to leave. And this little community of about 70 people, they experienced communitas. As they began to move out, they packed up all their belongings and they went on this journey with God. In Judges chapter 7, Gideon, I love this story. He's up against an army of 135,000 men. He's got an army of 32, greatly outnumbered. God comes to him and says, your community of 32,000 soldiers? Yeah, it's too many. People might get the wrong idea that you actually had the victory on your own. I need you to whittle it down. So he whittled down his community of 32,000 down to 22,000. And then he whittled it down to 10,000. And then he took this community and whittled it down to 300. You got to believe when those 300 men went out against 135,000 as they left that camp, that communitas was happening in their souls. There was a band of brotherhood that was happening as they went out on mission together, on this ordeal, on the uncertainty. They didn't know what was going to happen, but they tasted communitas. David's band of brothers trying to survive the threats of this tyrannical king as they were hiding in caves. They experienced, that small group experienced communitas because they were trying to survive an ordeal. Jesus just finishes getting baptized and he gathers his 12, his small group of 12 disciples. They don't just huddle and cuddle. No, they go on a mission. They're trying to survive the elite and the pressures of the elite religious establishment and the Romans' pressure, and they're on a mission. They're experiencing not just community, not just toothless community, they're experiencing communitas. In fact, Alan Hirsch, in his book, The Forgotten Ways, this is how he defines communitas. He says this: communitas is therefore always linked with the experience of liminality. In other words, crisis, ordeal, shortage of resources. We don't have what we need. It involves adventure and movement, and it describes that unique experience of togetherness that only really happens among a group of people inspired by a vision of a better world who actually attempt to do something about it. They're not just sitting and huddling and cuddling. They're actually attempting to do something about it. In many ways, there is nothing new about communitas. In fact, I think you probably have known about communitas almost your whole life, even since you were a kid. You knew about communitas. You just didn't know what to call it, and you didn't know that ping in your heart that you felt actually was leading you to something beyond community. Your heart pinged when you watched Woody and his small group on a mission to rescue Buzz, right? From that misfit kid, that maladjusted kid, Sid Phillips next door. Your heart pinged as you traveled with Frodo Baggins and his small group as they were on an impossible, daunting mission to destroy the One Ring at Mount Doom. You were there. Your heart pinged repeatedly along with Peter Quill and Groot and this incredible small group of misfits as they saved the universe, right? And you felt communitas. You didn't know what it was. You didn't know how to put a name to it, but it definitely wasn't community. It was that next thing above community. Your pinging heart sang along with P.T. Barnum and his small group of runaways as they rise from the ashes and they rewrite the stars and they move to the other side and they come alive again. And you sat there and you sang along with it and you loved it and you were inspired by it. By the way, possibly one of my new favorite movies. I know, a musical. Can you believe it? But I loved it. Not because of the community, the toothless community, but because of the communitas. And everything in me goes, oh, I want that. When you watch these movies, you're so inspired because you want that. Here's the irony. Hollywood understands communitas. The Church of Jesus Christ, not so much. Hollywood gets it. You were inspired when Nemo and Dory and their small group were attempting to rescue Nemo from the dentist fish tank. Your communitas indicators were lighting up the dashboard of your soul when you watched Captain Miller and his small group go off to save Private Ryan, right? I mean, you were there. It's like, oh my goodness, I love that. And you watched as Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and their small group were up against perilous opposition to bring justice to the universe and save the universe. So where are our stories of communitas? Why does Hollywood have to have the best stories of communitas? Shouldn't God's church be the place where people come to be inspired and to have their minds blown by watching what's happening, going, my heart is pinging all over the place. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to call it. But something's happening as I watch these people on mission. You know, a lot of pastors will turn to Acts chapter 2, the picture of the birth of the first ever church. And they'll say, this is a great example of community. And this is really a great example of small groups. And I want to differ with those pastors. And I've even been one to use that passage to preach that message. I don't think this is a picture of community. I don't think this is a picture of small group programs and formulas and structures. I think this is a profound picture of what's next, of communitas. So I'm going to read this passage for us. And I want you to watch the dashboard of your heart to see if anything pings to life. Peter was pleading and offering many logical reasons to believe. Whoever made a place for his message in their hearts received the baptism. In fact, that day alone, about 3,000 people joined the disciples. The community continually committed themselves to learning what the apostles taught them, gathering for fellowship, breaking bread, and praying. Everyone felt a sense of awe because the apostles were doing many signs and wonders among them. There was an intense sense of togetherness among all the believers. They shared all their material possessions. They sold any possession or good that didn't benefit the community, and they used the money to help everyone in need. Wow. They were unified as they worshiped at the temple every day in homes. Yeah, they broke bread and they shared meals with glad and generous hearts. Day after day, the Lord added to their numbers everyone who was experiencing liberation. Every time I read that passage, my heart lights up, the indicators lighting up like crazy, pinging all over the place. We're experiencing and watching something happen that I want. And I hope that you sit there and go, oh, I want that too. That's what I want to be a part of. I don't want to just go to the program of church on a Sunday morning. I don't want to just go to the program of small groups. I want to be part of an adventure. I want to be part of solving and taking on ordeals and struggles and problems. Do I think that you should be part of a small group at Riverwood? Duh. Of course I do. Of course I think you should be part of a small group at Riverwood. I have this increasing conviction that every single Christ follower should be part of 3 environments. Weekly, their worship, praise God with all their hearts worship environment. That they should be part of a small group, have conversations kind of community environment. You can't have a conversation with a crowd, but you sure can in a small group. The Bible's full. Every group that did anything was a small group of people on a mission. I think you should be part of a serving community. I think you should go to the back and figure out, where do you want me to serve in my church? Because you've poured resources into me, and I think you should stand back there until you figure out where it is that God wants to use you to make your church great. Absolutely, I think you should be part of that. But that's not the hard stuff. that I'm challenging you to. That is Christianity 101. That's kindergarten. That's the basics. Worship community, small group, relationship community, serving community, that's only the basic stuff. That's not the hard challenge. So what's the hard challenge? Well, the hard challenge, number 2 in our series, is this: expand your imagination and move from mere community to a gutsy, life on the edge, inspiring, get the mission done communitas. And that might happen, and I hope it happens in your small group setting. But I hope you don't just, have the nice little crackers and dips and chips and soft drinks and sit around in your little circle and huddle and cuddle, and that's as far as it goes. Do we want that? Yeah, that's step 1. That's kindergarten. We should all be part of a community like that. But then we got to do something with it. We got to move that community to a gutsy place. So, yeah, do I want you to be part of a small group? Absolutely. In fact, on your seats, there's a small group card. It's got all our small groups. We have hundreds of small groups. Why? So that there's a place for every Riverwooder. Want you to be part of a small group? Absolutely. Basic stuff. Not a challenge. Get part of a small group. We have small groups for married couples. Carolyn and I are going to be leading that one. We got a couple of new women's small groups. Really excited about what's happening there. You can find these cards at Small Group Central. We got Central Perk for single adults, 35 to 45. There's something called the Gap for ages 25 to 35 that are singles. I mean, these are fantastic. Financial Peace. We got all these networks. We got home groups. We got moms groups. We have so many groups. Why? Because we need to make room for every single Riverwooder to be part of a group. But is that the goal? No. That's not the goal. That's only the starting point. The goal is to spark communitas in your heart and give you an opportunity. I was thinking about this last week. We often say around here, life is good in rows, but life is better in circles. We can worship and praise God in rows. We do it every weekend. It's good. But you grow in circles. And I was beginning to think about circles, and I thought, wow, there really is a tremendous power in circles. And then a picture popped into my head that reminded me, as awesome as circles are, the magic happens and amazing happens when that circle gets together, but doesn't just cuddle and huddle, but that circle gets together and lets go and does something. In fact, if I was to describe this picture that I had in my mind, it would look something like this. Okay, so my mind is a scary place. I realize that, and I got weird pictures in my head, right? But I was thinking, what? So many of us, we try to do life, and we just sort of do this thing. We're trying to get creative, and really, there is tremendous power in circles, isn't there? There's incredible momentum and centrifugal force that happens. Circles are good. Do we want you in a circle of a small group? Absolutely. No doubt about it. We hope that you will find, whether on the app or on that card or out at Small Group Central, you'll find your circle. But then don't just be satisfied petting the lion, the toothless lion of community. Don't be just satisfied going around and around and around the circle. Instead, sit there as a circle and say, how do we go deeper? How do we make a difference? How do we take this circle and how do we do something with this circle? How do we begin to go and slay some giants? How do we go and make a difference with our lives? So maybe as you're sitting in your small group circle, maybe that's going to be, let's just take what we're doing to a deeper level. Let's examine the ordeals and the liminality and the difficulties in one another's life to a deeper place. Let's make a difference. Or maybe it's going to be, here's a crazy idea, maybe it's going to be your small group saying, you know what would happen if we organized 4 small groups to go and serve at the African worship community and just take care of the kids and teach them until we can get a full children's ministry going. Let's get missional. What would happen if our small group went out and we became a team for the turkey trot? And we raised $1,000. So we have to sell some of our possessions. We raised $1,000 to make that state-of-the-art community kitchen happen. What would happen if we went out and we said as a small group, we're going to actually serve together. Well, nothing better than serving together as a small group. We're going to serve together at the refuge and take care of all those kids. Those moms, most of them don't come to church. This is their only experience of church. And there's so many kids to care for and love on. What would happen if you as a small group said, hey, what's a need in our city? Let's get together. Instead of just 1 or 2 of us going, let's go together as a small group and make a difference. Do we want you to be part of a small group? Absolutely. Do I want you to taste community? Absolutely. Christianity 101, kindergarten, do it. You got to be at worship, small group, and serving, absolutely. But that's not the hard challenge. The hard challenge is then taking that small group of people and engaging ordeal and vision and mission and making a difference. So here's what I want to do. I want to release all of our sites to their site pastors in just a moment. But I want everybody at the warehouse, fire hall, up in Churchill, those of you sitting in Starbucks watching this message, you can stand too. Everybody stand together, okay? We're all going to stand together. I want to pronounce a benediction over you, and then we're going to wrap up. Here we go. Here's the benediction for today. Church, we will never drift, float, or slip into the big vision that God has for our lives. You will never creep into the big future. You will only go there if you declare it boldly. You will need to declare it boldly. If you want to join us in the adventure of becoming bold, passionate, faithful followers of Jesus, you're going to have to make some bold, passionate, faithful plays in your life. So may the God of Communitas give you a small group of people who will help you rise above. May the God who loves people so much give you a group of people who will yell at you, "Don't you sit down, and I'll meet you at the finish line." May God help you experience the force and the power of the circle, but save you from from simply going around and around and around. May the God of resurrection power empower you to make the big plays, to worship God with all your heart, to push your imagination from mere community to the wonder of Communitas, and to own your place on God's team and serve with all of your heart. So now, do not slacken your faithfulness as you serve the Lord. Work hard. Let your spirit be on fire, bubbling up and boiling over as you serve the Lord. As you serve the Lord with all of your heart. Amen. Have a fantastic week. God bless you.